Right, so President Cyril Ramaphosa is this afternoon chairing an extraordinary joint Brics meeting on the current situation in the Middle East. Let's listen in now.
Destruction. And in our discussions today, we also emphasize that civilians must be protected in accordance with international humanitarian law and international human rights law. And as the chair, we join calls for the immediate, and all of us have said that there must be immediate release of all civilians who are being held. And we've also said that we condemn any kind of individual or mass forcible transfer or deportation of people, particularly Palestinians, from their own land. And we reiterated that the forced transfer and deportation of Palestinians, whether inside Gaza or to neighboring countries, gave rise for great concern, and they also breached the Geneva Conventions. We also, in our discussions, expressed our deep concern at the dire humanitarian situation in those occupied territories, and we reiterated the need for the respect of humanitarian law and the need for full, immediate, and safe, unhindered access to the provision of aid in accordance with the basic principles of humanity and impartiality as well. We reiterated our commitment to the peaceful resolution of differences and disputes. And this was stressed over and over, that the dispute should be resolved through dialogue and inclusive consultations in a coordinated and cooperative manner. And we support all efforts that are conducive to the peaceful settlement of the crisis. We all agreed that this crisis has gone on for far too long and now needs to be resolved. We also, in our statements and articulation, we've called for an immediate and durable and sustained truce. In other words, the cessation of hostilities, a ceasefire, in other words, that a ceasefire must happen immediately to stop the suffering that the people of Gaza are being subjected to, including, yes, the people in the occupied West Bank. We reiterated our strong support for regional and international efforts aimed at achieving this cessation of hostilities. We also felt that Brics countries have a responsibility to raise this matter in whatever forum, in the United Nations and in many other places, because we are all convinced that the Brics collective gives us a very important voice in the world. And this cooperation mechanism should be utilized to ensure that there can also be peace in Gaza. We reaffirmed our commitment to the basic principle that peace and security in the Middle East should be achieved and sustained in accordance with and in full respect for international law and the United Nations Charter. We reaffirmed the primary role of the United Nations Security Council in maintaining international peace and security. And this, in my view, are the views that we have all collectively supported here. And we are honored and humbled as South Africa that the leaders of all the countries represented here today have been able to come together in this meeting, the virtual meeting, to express our views on the conflict that is unfolding. We acknowledge the important role played by relevant international and regional organizations, including the League of Arab States and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, in addressing threats to peace and security in accordance with Chapter 8 of the UN Charter. We welcome the briefing by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on the outcomes of the joint extraordinary Arab and Islamic summit held in Riyadh. We also welcomed the fact that President al-Sisi held the Cairo Peace Summit, which also took a very clear position on this matter as well, much as there were differences in terms of calling for a ceasefire as well as humanitarian assistance to go through. We did, yes, emphasize the importance of preventing further destabilization and escalation of violence, particularly with regard to this conflict having the threat of spilling over in the region. And we've called upon all parties to exercise maximum restraint and called upon those with influence to work towards this objective. We reaffirmed in our discussion that a just and lasting solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict can be achieved by peaceful means. So as chairing this meeting, I thank you all for these views, which I have found to be quite common amongst all of us. As I have perceived, there haven't been differences in what we have articulated, and I would agree with President Raisi that there is consensus. And if you all agree, this is the type of consensus that I, as chair, would be willing to then articulate more publicly, as we didn't have sufficient time through our Sherpas to have a clear declaration. If you all agree that this more or less forms a consolidation of the views and the thoughts that were expressed here, I will then go ahead. But having said so, I thank you once again. But would you be happy if we go ahead with this type of summarized position that articulates our views? I take it we are all agreed. So I thank you very much, and I give applause to all of us for this type of position. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So that then brings an end to our meeting and discussions. And I thank you, and I say goodbye to all of us.
Right, so live on your screens, that's the Brics meeting, of course, on the Israel-Hamas war. We know that President Cyril Ramaphosa was chairing and overseeing that meeting in his capacity as the Brics bloc chairperson. Leaders of Brics member states invited representatives, including Saudi Arabia, Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE, all in attendance, just having taken a stance on what the consensus is regarding the positioning and situation in the Middle East, what's happening in Gaza in relation to the Israel-Hamas war, and where to from here. So we'll continue to monitor developments. We know that United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is also taking part in that virtual session. At the end of the gathering, leaders adopting a joint statement on the situation in the Middle East with particular reference to Gaza.